Well, hello there. Welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Jakey. It is Tuesday, December 28th, 2021. The 54th episode of Tuesdays with Jakey and the last one of 2021. Here I am in beautiful Yellow Pine, Idaho, where it is currently 4 degrees Fahrenheit, not Celsius. And, well, here we are at the end of a year, right? What a fucking year it was. You know, I don't want to freak you all out or anything, but remember that picture of Bernie Sanders with his mittens on, sitting looking disgruntled? That was only 11 months ago. So what a long year it's been. Is this the longest year we've ever had? Maybe. 2020... 2021, right. I forget how many years have even gone by in this goddamn pandemic. And spent a lot of my time doom scrolling. Recently throughout the pandemic in bits and pieces. And it's fucking exhausting, man. Not doing anything is exhausting. So if you're exhausted and you don't know why, could be depression. It could just be this fucking year. You know, it's been rough and long and brutal and isolating, even for those of us who aren't self-isolating in the backcountry of Idaho. I'm just saying, if you're here and you're listening to this, then you're doing okay. And that's something I've been reminding myself for the past week. And last week I was in a mood, so to speak. And the week before, too. And for a few weeks before that. And I guess I pulled myself out of it. Combination of exercise, eating much better, completely cut out the pot weed from my intake diet, which has been for the better. Because that shit's like a slippery slope, right? You smoke a little bit of weed, then you eat a little shitty food, and then the next day you smoke a little weed a little earlier and you eat shittier food, and then the next day you wake up and you're like, You know, it reminds me of a friend I talked to a few years back, and he seemed like a stoner, so I asked him one day, like, do you smoke pot? And he was like, no. And I was like, why not? And he said, well, because remember all those things they taught you about pot in junior high school? And I was like, yeah. And he said, turns out they're true. It makes you lazy, it makes you stupid, it makes you unmotivated, and it might not be true for everybody, but it's usually true for me. If I smoke weed a few days in a row, it starts losing its benefits, and the negative sides go up. And I think around the time of realizing that, like, it was 2 years, 2 months, 2 days. I realized that the other day, on Christmas Day. It was 2 years, 2 months, 2 days of sobriety. With the occasional toots of reefer mixed in. And I gotta say, when I smoke one hit of reefer and then put it down, it's great. I love it. I fucking watch a goofy movie and I laugh my ass off. And I just really enjoy myself. And most times when I do that, then I put it down and don't have it again for a week or a month or a few months or whatever it is. But when I got up here, I started smoking more regularly. And God forbid, that's not to say, like, I certainly wasn't not like a wake and bake guy. And I don't think pretty much nobody would call what I was doing excessive, except me, because it was too much for myself. And that shit you got to figure out for yourself, right? Like, everybody's body chemistry is different, so everybody's body is going to react different to different substances, right? Like, so many people can drink alcohol normally and have a couple drinks or a drink and then not have a drink for a while. I'm not really one of those guys. I'm almost always positive that if I'm feeling good from a drink, then another one will make me feel better. And then you get drunk and you don't really understand how you're feeling, and then you just keep drinking and then you pass out. And that has been a pattern for me points throughout my life. But yeah, now I don't drink at all, and I don't even feel tempted to. But I do feel tempted oftentimes to want to alter my consciousness. And I can alter it in good ways by exercising, by reading, by meditating, by doing good things. But those are a lot harder than just having a little toot. And that's all. That's just all to say that if you are having a hard time this year, of course you are. If you weren't having a hard time right now, then He'd probably be a CEO of some Fortune 500 company who's doing better than ever on the backs of all of the downtrodden. Um, but I'm feeling better, mostly. I'm still, darkness can tend to creep in. And it's been a tough time, but more often than not, I'm feeling good. And it's a fucking struggle though. Every day, it's a struggle to be alive. Um, and if you're not struggling, I kind of don't trust you right now, especially. And now, news this week, obviously, um, you know, fucking COVID cases are through the roof. Nobody can get tests. Joe Biden said, it's a state's problem and fucked off on vacation, which, like, if you don't view Joe Biden as a completely laughable president by this point, then I also don't trust you. And just all the promises he's gone back on. Not even gone back on. Like, he didn't even start to do any of this shit and try to tell everybody they got to pay their student debt right now. And you know what? Just don't pay it. When it comes time to pay it, just don't. Fuck it. Just put a middle finger up to the system. That's what I like doing. I did watch a TV show last week called Euphoria on HBO, and I was shocked that I liked it. Because I thought it was going to be for teenagers, because it's about a bunch of teenage girls doing drugs and having risky sex, and just the struggles of being a teenager. Which, God, man, I'm glad when I was a teenager there wasn't social media. I gotta say that. But so I watched the show, and I just gotta say it was incredible. The visually it was stunning. The story, the character development, the dialogue, the use of music was some of the best I've ever seen in a TV show. And I watched it with subtitles on, which I do a lot for shows. And I would highly recommend watching it with subtitles on, only because a lot of the lyrics are somewhat indecipherable from the songs, but they put those up on the screen, and it really shows you even further than just the mood and the feeling and the sound of a song, how well these songs were chosen and placed in the show, to kind of accentuate and prop up what was going on the screen, and compliment, that's the word I was looking for. And there was so the series, the first season was 8 episodes, and then they made 2 more hour-long episodes, each devoted to 2 of the main characters. And I'm still got to watch the one about Jules, but the episode about Rue, it was basically just an hour-long episode of her and her sponsor meeting up in a diner, and she's high and tries to tell her sponsor she's doing fine, and he sees right through it. And he kind of busts out in this monologue that just stunned me and stopped me in my tracks, because it complemented a lot of stuff that I've been thinking about lately. And I'm going to read that right now, because you don't really, for what he says in this monologue, I gave you more than all the context you need, because it really works as a standalone piece, but I'm going to read it right now. And he says, "But haven't you heard, man? Revolutions are no longer radical. There's so many revolutions that everybody's a revolutionary. The rich, the poor, the right, the left, the young, the old, the beggars, the bankers. Man, is it beautiful, huh? Everyone all at once fighting one revolution after another. I tell you, I never thought I'd see so many revolutions in my entire life. The revolutions are fought and won so damn fast that people don't even have time to implement change. Because have you heard, huh? There's a new revolution. I went down to buy me a pair of new kicks at the Nike store the other day, and I look up on the wall and I see in 20-foot letters these words, 'Our people matter.' And I thought, man, that feels good. Here I am in my favorite shoe stores out here saying, I know you've lived a long life, and I know that life ain't always been easy, but here you are at 54 years old, my brother, and I want to say I love you. And I'm like, man, this feels good. And I'm like, thank you, Nike. And then I pick up a pair of these sneakers, and I look at the price tag, and it says $139.99. And I'm like, I thought Nike loved me, appreciated me in my life. What happened here? And I look around the store, and I see a whole bunch of black people, also feeling good. And I see a whole bunch of white people, too, also feeling good. Some even, posing and taking pictures with the 20-foot letters on the wall. Straight up, I just had this feeling and I thought, fuck you, Nike. You don't give a fuck about anything or anyone. Chinese Muslims are sewing these Kaepernick sneakers for 7 cents an hour and you're telling me my black ass matters? Give me a fucking break. If rap music wasn't mainstream, if Nirvana was still the most popular brand in America, they'd be out here saying depression matters because that's what would move sneakers. Shit, these advertisers, they're too good. And they've outsmarted us. But at the same time, your generation's full of some mark-ass bitches because they've tapped into your phones. Yeah, they've read your likes, they've predicted your moves and trapped your asses. You think you out here fighting a revolution and Bank of America's on your side? Give me a fucking break. Because a true revolution has no allies. It's just that simple. Because a true revolution, not a fast one, not a quick one, not a fashionable one, but a real fucking revolution, is at its core spiritual. And it's a complete decimation of one's priorities, beliefs, and way of living. And reconstruction in the spirit of, you have to create a new god, or gods, or whatever you can. But it's imperative that you believe in something greater than yourself, all right? And it can't be the ocean or your favorite song, and it can't be the movement or the people or the words. You've got to believe in the poetry, because everything else in your life will fail you, including yourself. Fuck. Man, that hit me so hard when I was watching it a few nights ago, and I thought about it more and more, and it was easy to relate it to my own life, because I've been thinking about the revolution that I've been living since COVID hit, and since I got out of the loony bin, the nut house, my treatment facility. If you're new to this podcast, probably not, but if you are, I was wildly suicidal and tried to kill myself in Las Vegas, and I locked myself in a hotel room for 3 weeks at the end of 2019, and I got saved by some friends and ended up in a treatment facility for 60 days in Florida, and I got home on December 23rd, 2019, and I had to gingerly piece my life back together and try to figure out what my life was going to look like now, because the way I had been living my life had been with the thought of ending my life soon, and that had been going on for a while. Been going on for a lot of my life, but really outwardly, it had been going on for a couple of years, and then really, really heavily for about a year, where I was just sure, like, I was going to kill myself. I was just trying to figure out how. So I got back to New York, and that's when my revolution started. And I had to figure out, what do I want my life to look like? How am I going to survive life? How am I going to choose things that strengthen me rather than weaken me? And how am I going to be able to make these healthy choices over and over? And I think that's a point a lot of us are at now, with COVID being almost 2 years old, and every time we think there's a ray of sunlight, that we're peeking out of this pile of rocks that's been dumped upon us, somebody drops a rock on that opening, right, and cuts off that sunlight. And then there you are again in the darkness. And some days it's a nice cocoon to be stuck inside and not having to worry about anything. But then you can't live like that forever. So, you got to figure out what's next. And when COVID busted out, when it came and hit, I had a really big concert booked for March 14th. I was going to have Diplo perform on my boat, and I was going to make a pretty good amount of money, and I was almost flat broke at that time, and I was really counting on that money coming through, and the show got canceled, and I realized pretty quickly that, like, it was going to be a while before we were going to have more shows, and that was the only way I had to make money, and I had to really scramble to figure out literally just how to buy groceries and put food on my table. And of course, I was numb for a little while, and I figured out a little hustle selling masks and t-shirts online, and I did well enough, and I hustled hard enough. When I say hustled hard enough, I was working literally 16, 18 hours a day for about a month and a half, trying to push these masks. And I got lucky that I was able to manufacture masks, custom design masks with whatever I wanted on them, earlier than most people, and I was able to make enough money to get my rent paid and to kind of dig myself out of that financial hole and just be able to see a little bit of daylight as far as that went. And then the protests happened, the Black Lives Matter George Floyd protests happened in New York, and I took off, and I came home from a protest one day, and I got in a fight with my landlord, and he had seen me on TV in one of the protests and got really upset, and told me I was siding with the wrong side and used a lot of colorful language. Dropped the N-word a bunch, calling me an N-word lover, and whose side was I on? And I was like, what do you mean, whose side am I on? I'm on the side of justice, right? Like, there's only one side anyone could be on, but that kind of sealed the deal for me right there, and I was like, I'm just getting the fuck out of here. And a couple of days later, I handed him my keys. I was like, dude, I'm out. And he was like, what? You can't just leave? And I was like, I can, and watch me. And I put all my shit in storage, and I got on my motorcycle, and I took off, and I've been trying to figure out what's next ever since then, but not even figure out what's next. I've been just trying to figure out what's today. Because be careful what you wish for, right? Because when I was like, I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to live my life when I got out of treatment, I didn't assume that that was going to mean I've got to figure out a whole new life for myself, top to bottom. I thought I'd get out. I got to figure out like a better daily routine, a better way to communicate with my friends and loved ones, to let them know how I was feeling, get things off my chest, be more open emotionally and vulnerable with the people who care about me and who I care about, because I had hidden all of my depression and angst and suicidal ideation from all my friends, and I had pretended that everything was going well. So when this all happened, I was more like, well, what the fuck am I going to do? And to be honest, I hadn't really cared much for promoting shows in the past couple of years before that, because it was something I did for money. And I thought I had lost the joy for it because of the depression. But once I came out of that, and you know, I jumped head first into meditation, obviously sobriety, and I was trying to figure out, like, all right, what's my life going to look like on a day-to-day basis? But I didn't think I was going to lose my entire business and career and everything I had worked for and all the professional relationships I had built up in life. I didn't think that was all going to go away. But the further I got away from it, the harder it was to be like, all right, yeah, I want to get back into promoting concerts. And, you know, the longer I was away from it, the less I wanted to do that. And thankfully, I didn't have the choice to do that for quite a long time. And then I did it this past summer. But I'm now kind of at the point where, like, I've really got to figure out what's going on. And I talked to a buddy yesterday. We had a long talk, and was kind of listening to a lot of what he was going through with a divorce, with 2 young children, and how fucked up that's been for him, and you know, the sort of insanity that his wife has been putting him through, literally stealing the kids from him and then calling the police and saying he was a drug addict and alcoholic, which none of was true. But anyway, I was listening to what he was talking about for a while, and then he was asking me, like, well, what's up with you? What's up with you and your life, and where are you at, and what are you going to do? And, you know, and that's something I've been thinking of. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to book some shows next year, I would assume. You know, I'm guessing the new Omicron variant is going to go away, right? And it'll fade, and everyone will get infected, and then they'll have to, you know, will we get more booster shots, a new vaccine, whatever? Like, eventually this is going to subside, right? And it's going to make it easier to book shows and make a living that way. But then I have to think, do I want to make a living that way? And the idea of that speech that I just read, that monologue, and the whole idea of a revolution, you know, and the revolution I think we're all fighting now is, what do we want our lives to look like, right? A lot of people are understanding that their lives look and feel better when they don't have to go into an office all the time and deal with a commute and things like that. And I get that. That's fucking awesome. And we're seeing a revolution in workers right now, and workers striking and unionizing and getting more fair treatment. But then you wake up today and you see the report from the CDC, or I guess maybe it was late last night, whenever it was, saying you only have to isolate for 5 days now, not 10. And it's fairly obvious that this is to prop up business, right? And it's to prop up the economy. And even the president used the word, so society can function. And he's just putting society in place of the economy. Because what we've seen for the past 30 or 40 years, really 40 years since Reagan became president, was business first and people second. And the idea of giving tax breaks to the rich and trickle-down economics, and if you give tax breaks to the rich, then they're going to start more businesses and give more people more opportunities. But if that was true, if giving businesses tax breaks was going to lead to more opportunity for the workers, then the minimum wage would have risen alongside inflation, right? But it's not. And President Biden, it's so hard to even call him President Biden. He's it's all, if you didn't come from this country and you watch President Biden giving a speech on TV, you'd be like, they replaced that asshole with this asshole. And that's not just my opinion, man. Like if you have friends who live in other countries, you know that's the rest of the world's looking at us like a fucking laughingstock, and was even before COVID, and is certainly looking at us as a laughingstock now. And it's like, the revolution I'm fighting with myself right now is, do I want to be back in the wheels of capitalism, right? And, if you have a mortgage, you're in the wheels of capitalism, because the banks want you to have to pay these bills for the next 30 years, right? You're kind of trapped in a worker mentality, and you're trapped in having to do what the man says and live a life that they sort of prescribed. Once you get on this hamster wheel, it's almost impossible to get off. And all these other things like Amazon and consumerism, and the idea of like, I can get anything I want delivered to me at any time. It's like, what do you need that for? And going broke was a total blessing to me, because it really made me examine the difference in my life between wants and needs. And right now I've got more than I need, way more than I need, as far as physical items and possessions, right? Yeah, do I want more? Sure. What do I want? A house that's my own? Probably. I'm living in this house that some people up in Yellow Pine sort of letting me live in for the winter, and that's cool. And my friend asking me yesterday, like, what's up with your life? Like, what's your plan? What are you going to do? And it's like, well, I'm 48 years old. Am I going to switch careers? I don't know. I talked about this last week on the podcast when they asked me anything, when there was that question of where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I said, I see myself as a writer. And in a perfect world, I'm going to finish writing this book and put it out, and it's going to be successful, and I'm going to write another book, and I'll be able to live off of that. But like, what do I need to live now? I used to need $200,000 a year to live a lifestyle that I wanted to live in New York City. And I slowly made more and more money, and I got trapped on that hamster wheel myself. And I was doing that working for myself. But the more you make, the more you spend, and the less you make, the less you have to spend. And the more you kind of start to figure out, like, all right, what is essential? What is necessary, right? What are my needs? And thankfully, man, I don't have kids, and I don't think I'm going to. Something remarkable would have to happen in my life for that. So all I have to think about is taking care of myself, which puts me in a very enviable position. But it's not a lucky position. Some people sometimes say, oh man, you're so lucky you don't have kids. I'm not fucking lucky, man. I've looked at this world since I was a kid and understood, like, I don't want to bring another kid in. I don't want to bring a kid in. I don't want to have to deal with a kid. Some of it was selfishness, but the older I get, the less it's selfish and the more it's somewhat selfless. Because would I like to have a kid or a dog? Like, sure. But can I take care of that? Like, no, because I think right now I'm bound for gypsyism. Like, am I going to live here in Yellow Pine forever? Probably not. Am I going to stay here in Yellow Pine next summer and work as a bartender and cook all summer? Very likely. if I book a lot of shows in New York, will I go back for some of them? Yeah. Will I want to live in New York for the summer? No. God bless air travel for that, right? So I'll be able to get back there when I need to for the shows I need to. But I'm not generating more relationships in New York, and I'm not generating more relationships in the music business, and I haven't. So that sort of career path is just gonna, slowly taper off, as it has been for the last few years. And I kind of let it taper off when I moved to London in 2014 and wasn't making new relationships, because any sort of business you're in is a business of relationships. Any kind of business. You could be making fucking bolts and screws or zip ties or whatever in a factory, but you have to have relationships with the people who want to buy these things and maintain those relationships. And that's why conferences and conventions are so big and all across the country and the world. You got to go hobnob and rub shoulders with the people you're going to be doing business with. And that's the kind of shit I have no interest in doing anymore. And I want to keep myself off this hamster wheel of capitalism, but it's tricky. I'm gonna have to figure out how to get health insurance, because Medicare for all is not coming, and I'm getting older and I'm gonna need health insurance. But the last time I had health insurance, which was basically right up until the beginning of the pandemic, when that all kicked off, I canceled my health insurance. I was paying $750 a month for health insurance that was so hard to fucking navigate. I barely had a primary care provider, right? That's what you call it. I saw someone twice for a physical over the course of like five years. And even getting that done was a nightmare. And then just getting blood work done was like just a lot of hoops you got to jump through. We're the only rich country in the world that does that. It's wild. But I'm like, all right, I'm going to have to figure that out. I don't want to end up with cancer and fucking not be able to get treatment, right? Or any sort of kind of disease like that. But also, I just don't want anyone to tell me what to do, ever. And I don't want to be on a Zoom call at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday because my boss tells me I have to. And I've been in plenty of work situations over my life, and I know that meetings pretty much don't accomplish anything. Hire talented people and get out of the way and let them do their thing. Give them some guidance, give them some support when they need it, help open doors for them, and help make sure other doors stay closed. Like, that's what being a good boss is about. It's not about cramming somebody's time and, like, making them work 40 or 50 hours a week. Like, I think now that we've seen that businesses can function with most of their employees remote, most people aren't working 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day when they're working remotely, right? Like, you can get your shit done in 2 or 3 or 4 hours a day. If you're very effective, you can get it done in a lot less than that. Obviously not if you're a factory worker, if you're making widgets or things like that. But how many widgets do we need, man? Like, do you need a new Amazon Alexa? I just read a story today before I recorded this podcast about, it was in the BBC. A girl said, a 10-year-old girl said to Alexa, "Give me a challenge." And Alexa actually said back to her, take a charging cable for your phone. I'm paraphrasing because I didn't pull the tweet up, but basically told her to take a cord that was plugged into the wall, pull it halfway out, and stick a penny against it. Basically, Alexa told her to electrocute herself, and Amazon replied and to the story and confirmed that it was something that really happened and that they fixed this bug in their system. And it's like, what are you doing? Who's fun? Like, what are we all doing? I'm not pointing a finger, but every time we buy more products and need more new things, and we all sort of are complicit in greasing the wheels of capitalism and keeping them running. Like, for what? To what end? Is it making any of us happier? If it was making any of us happier, we'd be the happiest country in the world because we're the most productive, right? We got the biggest economy, or second biggest now. You know who the happiest country in the world is, right? It's Norway. Up by the fucking Arctic Circle. You know why? Because they pay a lot of taxes. They have a lot of oil. But they pay a lot of taxes, and everything's taken care of for them. And you get health care, you get good housing. What do we get? We get an inordinate amount of people living on a poverty wage, right? We get people at Walmart workers qualifying for food stamps while we let Walmart get away without paying taxes. Like, I could go on and on with this shit, but it's so frustrating, and I don't want to be a part of that anymore. I want to just keep, like, for the most part, I like this simple lifestyle that I have. And, you know, I miss my friends to a point. I don't miss them so much that I went to Los Angeles this week, and it's one of the things I talked about on the podcast last week, that I was sort of trying to figure out if I was going to go to LA, and I didn't, obviously, because I'm still here in Idaho, like I said. But I just realized, yeah, you want connection with friends, but happiness starts in your own heart. And that's kind of how I pulled myself out of this funk last week. And if I had thought that I really needed that, I would have gone. But I was sort of just trying to find other people to fix my blues for me. And I realized you got to fix that shit yourself, right? Get up, do some fucking push-ups, go for a long walk, breathe some fresh air, just get your body moving, drink water, eat vegetables, you know, don't eat so much sugar. It's pretty simple things that we need and that are going to keep our brain on the right track. But of course, when you're prone to anxiety and depression, like I am, sometimes those things can seem completely insurmountable. And sometimes, you know, even just fucking getting out of bed and getting in the shower can seem insurmountable. So if that's what you're going through, I get it. But it's not insurmountable, you know? And if you do those things, like, you don't need to go see a Metallica concert or fly across the country to see your friends. You know, you got to examine your own head and figure out what is really bothering me. You know, and that, again, that's for the most part, right? Like, if you need antidepressants, if you can't figure that out, how to do those things, then yeah, you should see a professional. So I'm not saying everybody can do this for themselves. I'm lucky enough to have had years of therapy now and lots of self-introspection. And I think I'm fortunate enough that I've always been prone to introspection, but I used to be very introspective, but I used to turn my brain off to these things. And I had this mantra for years and years that was like, therapy's for stupid people. I'm smart, and because I'm smart, I know I'm crazy, and because I know I'm crazy, I can take care of myself because I'm aware that I'm crazy. And that was one of the stupidest things ever. And now I still know I'm crazy, but now I've gotten a handle on why I've engaged in certain self-destructive behavior over the years, and self-defeating behavior, which I guess are two different things. I've certainly been self-destructive for big points in my life, whether it's drugs or alcohol or getting in situations and fist fights and challenging people that I knew was going to end up in a physical altercation, and that was stupid. But now it's a lot more positive introspection, and I feel pretty well equipped to deal with the stuff that comes my way. But I still get depressed. I still get anxious. I still get lonely. I still wonder if I'm enough. I still wonder if anybody's going to love me. And when they do love me, I start to wonder sometimes why they love me. But that shit's slowly changing and has been changing. And I feel a lot more worthy of love now, and know that it's going to come around to me, and know that I deserve it. And I saw an interesting quote the other day that said, what was it? It was about, don't love anybody who lets you go to sleep wondering if you matter. There's a few things I took some screenshots of over the past week that I found interesting. One is, stop being so fucking forgiving. People know exactly what the fuck they're doing, which I found to be great. Because oftentimes in the past, I've definitely been too forgiving of people. Oh, well, maybe they're going through a tough time. And it's like, okay, well, maybe they are, but they still know what the fuck they're doing. I don't think anyone is ever ready, but when someone makes you feel alive again, it's worth the risk. There it is. In the end, here's the one. In the end, all we want is someone who will choose us and will keep on choosing us even on our worst times. That's love. And of course, we want someone who's going to be able to keep choosing us through their worst times too, right? And not push us away. Um, Relationships are tricky, man. I hope to get into another great one day. Um, but until then, you got to take care of yourself, and I got to take care of myself. I'm certainly not about to meet a woman up here in Yellow Pine out of the blue, because there's none here, nobody coming here. And I sort of came to terms the other day with the fact that I might just be up here. I might just be up here for the long term this winter. I got some tire chains for my car on Friday, and I guess eventually I'll try to drive out of here, but like, I don't need to, you know. Maybe I'll have a friend come visit at some point, and then maybe I'll have to get out of here and drive down to Boise. But if that doesn't happen, like, why am I going to go anywhere? I've thought a lot about going to see Metallica in February in Las Vegas. Because something that Rolling Stone show showed me was that, like, I do want to go see more concerts. And I don't want to be out seeing bands in small clubs every night the way I used to. But I miss those gatherings. And then I went to that comedy show, Whitney Cummings in Boise, and I realized, like, I really miss laughing. And one of the things I was going to do in LA was go to comedy clubs. But then when this Omicron popped up, that sort of was like, wow, I don't know that I want to go sit in a fucking cramped comedy store. So it was a combination of Omicron, not being able to go to a comedy show, having to drive out of here a few days early and spend a few days, 2 or 3 nights in a motel in Boise to even get to LA. Then the possible struggle with trying to get back into Yellow Pine without tire chains, without having to buy a whole new set down in Boise. A lot of it kicked in, and I just said, well, you know what? You can make yourself happy. And something I've said on here before is the most important relationship we have is with ourselves. And I was like, well, I'm going to stay here and work on that relationship with myself. And been doing less doom scrolling for the past week, and more putting my phone away and just reading a book, and just kind of focusing on myself. If the more I look at my phone, and the more I look at, even if it's reading something on my phone or computer, and like scrolling entertainment websites, it's not always doom scrolling through Twitter and stuff, but just like the more engaged I am with the digital culture, the less happy I am. So that's something I'm going to continue to work on while I'm up here. And see, I don't know what else. I had made some other notes. I don't know how much more I want to say. Yeah, okay, here's some notes I wrote. I don't know if I have any ambition left. I want to make enough money to survive and somewhat thrive, but not to accumulate it. And I used to be into accumulating wealth. I didn't have a goal, but I just wanted to keep making more money so that I'd have plenty of money to spend. And one of the biggest joys of my life was finally, at a certain point, somewhere in the mid-2000s, I had made enough money that I didn't have to worry about what things cost anymore. And that was a joy, but then that also led me to conspicuous consumption. And I was buying things to try to fill holes, right? If I was feeling depressed or angsty or anxious or lonely, then I'd buy a new pair of sneakers, or I'd go out shopping, or I'd buy records or CDs or a new leather jacket or whatever, a new motorcycle. I don't count that because that's something I would use all the time. But I got to the point where I had 40 or 50 pairs of fucking sneakers. And I was like, well, what are you doing with all those sneakers? But the joy was being able to go into a grocery store, right, and buy whatever I wanted and not care. And people were like, why do you shop at Whole Foods? It's so expensive. And I'm like, well, because they have the best produce, and it's kind of the fanciest. It's the supermarket that felt the nicest, right? It wasn't completely crammed aisles like the cheaper, more economical supermarkets in New York are. So it's a big joy to be able to have more money than I knew what to do with, right? Or if I went on vacation, I just would book a flight for the days I felt like going and not look around to see, like, all right, how am I going to get to wherever I was going in the cheapest way, right? Like, are your dates flexible? I'd be like, no, this is the day I'm going to go. That flight's $800, but if I left 2 days later, it would be $400. Who cares? I have $800. So the money afforded me a certain sense of freedom. Um, but like, I'd rather have the freedom of, the next note I wrote is, I used to want to be rich. Now I just want to be free and to be happy. And freedom to me now is not having to answer to anybody. And booking concerts, even though I did it for myself, you're always answering to someone else. You're answering to an agent or a manager or a venue owner and band members, and struggling to make sure the tickets sold, and it's shit that would keep me up at night all the time. And now I'm like, nothing keeps me up at night, especially not with a job as a bartender. You know, things that keep me up at night are my own neuroses, but it's not, I got to get back to this person, I got to do this. I used to make to-do lists all the time, and now my to-do lists are like, write postcards to your friends, journal more, write in your book more, write, paint more. Those are my to-do list. And all those things on the to-do list are things that fulfill me. To me, that's freedom, right? Not you got to get this project done in this time, or make sure these ad mats are done, or post more to social media to try to sell tickets to this show. That shit was driving me bananas. And you know, I'm looking at the back half of my life and trying to figure out what do I want it to look like. And I certainly don't want it to be in service of other people, in service of other people's capitalism, right? Like, of course, being in service to other people, I love making my friends happy. I love bringing joy to people. I love laughing with people. I love inspiring people, hence this podcast in some ways, which I talked about recently, that like, I'm still not sure why it inspires people. And I think that goes back to me being unsure that I'm worthy of love, and unsure that what I'm doing is right, you know, and just deep-seated insecurities that I've had since childhood for a lot of different reasons. But it does inspire people. I know it. And I get letters, and I get fucking, you know, I get emails, I get things on social media. I got a bunch of packages for Christmas from people. I got some amazing fucking packages. I got a fucking amazing comforter and pillows from someone, a listener on here. Someone sent me a fucking crazy tea setup the other day, and a Roku, and someone sent me a bunch of records, and I got a great sweatshirt that I thought was hilarious. The Under Armour sweatshirt that just says, is black, and it says freedom, and then it has a little American flag on the side. And when I opened it up, I was like, what the fuck? What is this? And then I laughed, and I was like, I know exactly what this is. This person wants me to fit in better in Yellow Pine. And I, you know, it was a hoot. And if I wasn't inspiring people, people wouldn't be sending me these things, right? So I know I do that. And though sometimes, though, I can't understand how or why, because sometimes I just feel so lost and lonely myself. But I guess what's inspiring is the vulnerability that I exhibit here, and also I know that it's my adventurous spirit. And I was talking to one of my dearest friends last night, and she, you know, when I was just telling her, I was like, I told her about the situation with the other friend that I spoke with, and was telling her about, you know, how I was like, just kind of like, how did I end up here? Like, and is 2022, am I going to be a bartender again for the summer? And like, that's definitely not a bad thing. And I can, you know, I was able to earn enough money this summer to make it through this winter. I think I can do that again. And with whatever other hustles I come up with, like, I'll be fine. But I was like, what am I doing here? And she, you know, I was like, I just kind of like ended up here, right? You know, and she reminded me that like, she's seen every step of that journey, and we've been super tight since, Jesus, 2012 or something. And she was pointing out to me that like, your journey's not at all crazy. It was all like calculated risks and small decisions that led you to here. Like, I'm gonna leave my apartment, right? And then I'm gonna get on my motorcycle and ride around for the summer and camp. And then I decided to rent a house in McCall for a few months, and then I extended it for a few more months, and then I got a job on a farm, and then I decided to come check this place out, Yellow Pine, and then I got a job here. And it's small decisions, right? I didn't just go from New York City to decide to live in Yellow Pine. Like, and I think my adventurous spirit is, I think that's something that people enjoy. following and maybe living vicariously through me, because not everybody can do that for whatever reason. A lot of people are trapped by jobs, they're trapped by mortgages, they're trapped by children. Um, but I think a lot of us have become trapped by our own imaginations and limits to that, and that's something. Thankfully, I've never really. That's something I've never encountered. So when I look back and try to think, like, a lot of times I've said people are like, oh, you're lucky for this reason or you're lucky for that reason. It's like, well, I've created my own luck. I didn't have a support network when I left my parents' home. In fact, it was the opposite. Everyone in my family told me I was going to be a failure, both my immediate family and my extended family. When I dropped out of college after 1 year, my parents both told me, like, this is the biggest mistake you could ever make. You're going to come crawling back and, like, wish that we'd pay for college for you now. My extended family, when I moved to New York, just told me, they straight up, they were like, you're never going to make it in New York. You'll be coming back to Lowell before you know it. And so venturing out on my own like that was not luck, right? It was like I created my own luck. I created my own opportunities by just going to New York and figuring shit out on my own. And everything I've done since then, I've figured out on my own. And yeah, people have given me opportunities, but because I would say because I earned them. I didn't have connections. I didn't have family money. I didn't have, none of it was easy. But my imagination was such that I was like, well, I'm going to move to Los Angeles. And then from Los Angeles, I was like, well, this isn't for me right now at this point in my life. That was in 1994. I was like, I'm going to move to New York City. And I moved to New York City and I fucking figured it out. And I slept on a floor for a while, literally. I fucking struggled. And I guess that's inspiring. And it's a good reminder that I can figure it out. I was thinking the other day that, book 2 could be, or whatever book it is, or maybe novella or whatever. Like, there's a whole book about Yellow Pine here. And I had the thought the other day that when I set myself on fire on stage with the Disco Biscuits in 1999, and if you're watching on YouTube, you see this scar on my neck is from skin graft surgery. I had a fire-breathing routine gone wrong with the Disco Biscuits. I've talked about that in other episodes, I believe. I'm sure I have. But the song that the band was playing was House Dog Party Favor. And the chorus are the lyrics, City Boy's out of his mind again. Oh yeah, City Boy's out of his mind again. And I was like, that's going to be a great title for whatever I write about leaving New York City and ending up in Yellow Pine, Idaho. And that made me feel really good. So the thing I said a little while ago about do I have ambition? Have I lost ambition? I don't know if I have any ambition left. I don't think I have ambition left to want to start another company or a business that requires other people, right? Like the concert business, which requires me to maintain relationships with artists, musicians, but more so, it used to be a lot more about the relationship you had with the artist and the musician. That's what I fell in love with, was like being able to talk to band members and come up with sort of strategies and plans for their careers and at least their shows in New York. And I used to love to sit with guys and girls and plot things out and be like, all right, well, here you're drawing 100 people here, but I believe in your music. And if we do this show now and 3 months later we come back and do this venue and pair you with that band, and like really like to strategize to try to help get bands to grow with more people. But now the agents and managers, they were always part of it, but they get furious if a promoter talks directly to a band member. It's like sacrosanct. I still do it all the time, but I do it with the people that I have longer term relationships with, where agents and managers, like they either trust me enough because we've worked together long enough, or I don't give a fuck because I know that they're going to come and go, because I know a lot of bands that fire their agents and managers over the years. So I'm like, whatever, dude. Like, I've been here a lot longer than you. I'm going to continue my relationship in the same way I've had my relationship. And if your insecurities make that hard for you to handle, then that's your problem. But the thing is, I don't have the ambition to start another business where I'm reliant on other people to pull things off or needing other people's trust in me. That's why on last week's episode, they said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I was like, I just want to be a writer, and be able to make a living off my writing and maybe my painting and my podcasting. And I just want to be in the business of me. Leads me to the whole idea of brand, too. People talk about themselves as a brand. And it's like, is that not the poison of capitalism? You're not a brand. You're a human being. You're an artist. You're your expressions, your emotions. You're your own brain. You're your own thoughts. You're not a brand. If you're a brand, then you're trying to position yourself as something you're not. And I think, doing this podcast every week now for a year and just being out here and talking openly, like, there's nothing, I can't hide who I am from people who listen to this. So am I building my brand? No, I'm connecting with people. I hope I am, obviously. So, was there more I wanted to talk about? Let's see here. I wanted to talk about the United Fruit Company. I'll save that for another one. Google United Fruit Company, though, if you're curious. If you're curious to how evil capitalism can be, just Google that. And read about the United Fruit Company. One of the things at Wetlands, one of the things I loved about Wetlands is I hadn't really considered that much about environmental social justice stuff before I got to Wetlands. I was just too young, I think, in the most part. I was just out to have a good time and wanted to make music. Throughout high school, I was like just into making music, putting on shows, getting high, selling drugs, making money, whatever, fucking whenever possible. So wasn't really till I got to New York that I understood how to create sexual relationships, so to speak. Like, I just kind of lucked into the little bits of fucking that I did. But like when I moved to New York, I sort of became my own person and really blossomed into my own personality. And of course that led to romantic encounters. But I hadn't really thought about environmental social justice issues until I got to Wetlands. And then, if you're not familiar with Wetlands as a club, it was a music venue in downtown Manhattan, opened in 1989, closed in 2001. I got there in 94, but the whole reason Larry Block opened Wetlands was he was way into environmentalism and social justice, and it was really Wetlands. What most people don't know is Wetlands was opened as a bar that would also house meetings about social justice and activism. And then they were booking some bands here and there, and they were going to have bands on the weekends. But that wasn't the point of it. It wasn't supposed to be a 7-night-a-week nightclub. It just it sort of like took off. And bands wanted to play there, and more bands wanted to play there than they thought would want to play there. And when it first opened, it didn't have much of a sound system. It had a really small stage. And if you've been there and you've wondered why the stage was positioned as it was because it was never meant to have six or 700 people in there watching a show. It was just meant to be like, oh yeah, you put the stage over there, there'll be some bands playing sometimes, but really it's supposed to be a bar where people can come and discuss thoughts and ideas about environmentalism and social justice, and that the profits from the bar would fund direct action campaigns. And one of the first things I got involved with was I started at Wetlands in October 94, and then in 1995 we organized something. There's a magazine called Adbusters that was promoting the idea of Buy Nothing Day for the day after Thanksgiving, International Buy Nothing Day. And Larry Block took that idea, and it was basically me and Larry and a couple other people who worked in the Eco Saloon, it was called, Wetlands Activism Center, organized direct actions. I guess they weren't really boycotts, but more just like, we sent people packets of things to photocopy and give away to promote the idea of a national Buy Nothing Day. And that's when shit really flipped for me. And I started to understand that everything you do sort of has an impact on society. And I forget how many of these direct actions we helped with, but it was all over the country. And it was, if not 100, damn close to it, or maybe more. And we were sending people sort of instructional packages with, hey, go to a local mall, here's what you're allowed to do, here's what you're legally allowed to do, you can hand out flyers, sort of exposing the horrors of overconsumption. And there was an ad that Adbusters made called "The Product Is You," and I bet you can find it on YouTube right now if you type in "The Product Is You," and it was a camera slowly panning around a guy who was watching TV, and it opens on his face and kind of goes around, and the glow of the TV is on his face, and the camera pans slowly around, and he's just watching TV and commercials, and talks about how the last phrase is "the product is you," and it zooms in on the back of his neck, and there's a barcode on the back of the guy's neck. And I didn't even fully understand what that meant at that time, but how prescient, right? Because now we've learned over the years, like, what is the most important thing that corporations can get is access to our data, right? And our likes and our clicks and our buying habits and where we travel to and, you know, geolocations and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, it really is. The product is us. And that led me to see something that we're seeing now. I remember very strongly in that era in the mid-90s of thinking like, well, if you don't buy things from mom and pop shops, like if Walmarts keep moving into these towns and they put out of business the smaller businesses, and then they sell things to people for cheaper and cheaper, and then they're going to pay people less, and they're going to put more stores out of business. You know, first it was Walmart, now it's Amazon, and it's like eventually we're going to hit a breaking point, right? Of like, well, who's going to buy these goods? And that's kind of where we're at now. Is like more and more people have less and less money, right? And less people have more and more money. So eventually we're going to get to a tipping point, and we're going to get the guillotines out, and we're going to behead the billionaires. And that's going to be glorious. And I can only hope and pray now that I stay alive long enough to see capitalism toppled. I would love that. And I'm doing my own little part by consuming less and less as I go on in life. And I want to keep doing that and being less part of that machine. Where's your anger? Where's your fucking rage? Where's your anger? Where's your fucking rage? I missed a few questions last week that I want to get to for the Q&A, the Ask Me Anything. Let's see. All right. I think there's more, but, you know, this Ask Me Anything, by the way, I love doing that last week, and I want to do it every week. So if you have a question, send it to me. You can send it to @JakeRocksOff, or you can text me, 917-443-7615. Also put that number in your Venmo and send me some loot if you wish. You know, what I'm telling people to buy less stuff. You know, if you want to put your money somewhere, if you want to make yourself feel better by purchasing something, purchase me a Venmo credit. I don't really, if you have extra money laying around, you want to send me some to get the boot off my neck a little and figure out, like, make it so that I don't further the timeline of when I actually have to work again to earn money. I'll work a straight job. Basically, if you want to show your appreciation for this podcast in a financial way, you could do that by sending me money via Venmo, or just send me a text message. Honestly, it means just as much, maybe actually more, to get a message from someone telling me why they listen to the podcast or what it's helped them with. Or recently I've gotten messages from people who said I inspired them to stop drinking, which is fucking fantastic. And I posted on Facebook and Instagram the other day about how it had been 2 years and 2 months and 2 days, and I got a lot of encouraging messages. I got a lot of messages saying, that's great for you, keep it up, but a lot of other people saying, you've been an inspiration to me. I have almost 2 years, I have 58 days, I have this, I have that, and it's I fucking love that. So I spend an hour every week talking to you guys. If you could spend a minute sending me a message letting me know that you appreciate hearing this podcast, that's pretty cool. My email is jake@rocksoft.com. My phone number is 917-443-7615. And most lovely of all, my P.O. Box is P.O. Box 113, Yellow Pine, Idaho, 83677. Send a letter, send a package, send a book, send a blow-up doll. I am very much undersexed out here in the wild, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So, yeah, blow-up doll would be appreciated. Would it really, though? I don't know. Probably. Would I fuck a blow-up doll if it came in the mail? Yes, at this point. Absolutely, I would. My friend Jorma Daniel Vick, who listens to this podcast, said he was going to send me one of those little blowjob machines, with a little fleshlight type of thing that you stick your dick in and push a button in and it gives you a blowjob, and he didn't. And then he sent me a cop-out message saying it's hard to find in Amazon when you Google blowjob machine, or which I totally understand. But that just shows where is my mind. Anyway, if you have questions you want to ask me, you do that via social media anytime, and I'll make a note of them, and I'll address them on the next episode. Next week, I think next week's episode, things could change, but I've got a couple themed episodes planned to open 2022. I think next week, because a lot of people have responded to my not drinking alcohol. So I think I'm going to do a whole episode with my relationship to drinking and how it's evolved and changed over the years, and how I quit one time for 3 years, then fell back in and kind of went in and out for a while. I think everybody expects that everybody who's got a drinking problem was just like a fall down drunk that ruined everything in their lives, and that's what led them to quit. But some people say you have to hit rock bottom to quit, but I don't think that's true. And certainly I've hit different types of rock bottoms, but I've also just at different points in my life been like, this doesn't work for me, and I just wouldn't drink for a while, and then I'd let it back in, and sometimes let it back out. It wasn't that I just completely lost control and was powerless against alcohol forever, over and over. And I think maybe people would like to hear more about that journey. I think there's also a lot of people who are out there who understand, like, they drink more than is healthy for them, and they have a hard time not because of social pressures or just because of boredom or habit or routine. And I think that'll be helpful. So that's what I plan on being the first episode of next year. And then I'm going to do a whole episode about my friend Rodney Speed, because I talk about him a lot, and I think I reference him a lot on social media. And not everybody obviously knows how that all developed and the arc of our relationship and how I ended up so close to him and why his death was so impactful on me. But this week, the two that I have left over that I didn't get to last week, and I definitely feel like I forgot to write one down, so if I find it, I'll get to it in a future episode. But one was, if you could be in any band, which would it be? And I thought about that a bunch, but the right answer is almost always the first one that pops in your mind and things like that. And I gave it a lot of different consideration, but I think if I could be in any band, it's hard to say now because no one's really touring, but it would be the Bronx and Mariachi El Bronx. And why? Because they're two bands in one, and they work a lot because they're two bands. So like when one band finishes an album cycle, they start writing for the other, where most bands would take time off. They're workhorses. And if I was going to be in another band, I would want it to be a band that I was in a lot and constantly touring and writing and recording material with. So that's the answer to that one. And if I could be in any band over the course of history, I don't know. Maybe Led Zeppelin. Maybe Prince's band. But being in Prince's band must have been really frustrating. To be like, I'm good enough to play with Prince, but I'm still not nearly as good as him. That would definitely be frustrating. I think Led Zeppelin. Just because that seemed like a fun band to be in. And they didn't do interviews. They didn't do TV appearances. They basically just wrote, recorded, and toured for the most part. And they didn't have to do all the extraneous bullshit. And that was because Peter Grant, their manager, understood at a certain point, like, let's have an air of mystery about this band, and let's not put the band on TV. Let's not be recording all these video clips and stuff. Let's make it so that if you want to see Led Zeppelin, you got to come to the arena and see Led Zeppelin. Like, we're not going to show you video of Led Zeppelin. You got to come see them. Whereas every other band was like whoring themselves out for every TV appearance they could, thinking more exposure was better. But Led Zeppelin didn't do that, and Peter Grant also turned the concert industry on its head. And for a long time, bands were getting 10 or 15 or 20% of the profits from a show, and the promoter was getting the rest. And Peter Grant was the first manager to put his foot down and be like, we want all the money. And the promoters were like, what? You're crazy. It's not going to work that way. And he was like, I'll just rent the fucking venue myself. We just put one ad in the newspaper and say, Led Zeppelin's coming to town. All the tickets will sell. And the promoters were like, well, I guess 20% of the profits, 15% of the profits is better than 0%. And that changed the concert industry for good, and because of that, Led Zeppelin made a fucking fortune on the road. So that's the band I'd want to be in. And the other question was from Brett Maxwell Dawson. Have you ever gotten starstruck around anyone, and has anyone ever gotten starstruck around you? very few people have I ever gotten starstruck around. I'd say absolutely Paul McCartney when he walked into Candle 79 where I was eating with my friends DJ, Jen Cash, Karina Reichman. We were on our way to see Kanye West at Madison Square Garden on the Life of Pablo tour, which I might say was one of the best rock concerts I've ever seen. That was the concert where Kanye had a floating stage that hung from the ceiling and floated over the crowd. And it was just him up on that floating stage. It was probably like a 12-foot by 12-foot platform that floated above the crowd for the entire show, 2+ hours. And it had lights underneath it pointing down at the ground. So, and there were these mosh pits breaking out under the stage, and it literally moved all around the arena. It was fucking incredible. But Paul McCartney came into Candle 79 while we were finishing our dinner, and we all just became tongue-tied, and we had finished our dinner, and we were just kind of like hanging out. We didn't need to leave, but we did leave after about probably less than 10 minutes of being in the restaurant there with him, and it was a quiet night at the restaurant, too. There weren't many other customers. We were in the upstairs room. And as far as I remember, it was the four of us at one table and Paul McCartney, a bodyguard, and his girlfriend at the other. And maybe she's his wife now. I don't think she was then, but whatever. But at one point, like, he saw me. He was sitting behind me, and someone said, like, "Oh, that's Paul McCartney." And at one point, I turned around to look to see if it was him, and he looked and just gave me a smile and a wave as if to say, "Yep, I'm Paul McCartney, and I'm sitting right here." And he was very gracious about it. But we got so nervous that we were like, we just got to get out of here. We couldn't even talk to each other. So that's starstruck. But the only other guy that I can remember, yes, I remember being starstruck by Joan Jett when I was 10 years old and saw her in the lobby of a hotel in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire. I don't know that really counts. But for the most part, I haven't really lost my cool around celebrities. Fabio, maybe, when I was working at Tower Records in LA on Sunset. A little bit when George Carlin came in, but not even starstruck. Like, most times I've encountered celebrities, I've felt like I've been able to just talk to them and say, "Hey, what's up?" I encountered a lot of them at Tower Records back in the day, and just a lot throughout my travels around New York, too. In different situations, and I've never had a problem just walking up and just introducing myself, but I got super starstruck when I met Chad Kroeger from Nickelback, and I met him backstage at the stadium at Hershey Park in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and my friend Steve Call is their booking agent and has been from the jump, and I remember he introduced me, and they brought me up to him, and I went to shake his hand, and I tried to I was smoking at the time, and tried to move my cigarette from one hand to the other, and I dropped it, and then I dropped my beer, and I was just, "Hi, I'm Jake." And it's really weird, but I had been listening to a lot of Nickelback around that time, and really fell in love with them, and I gotta say, I still really like a lot of Nickelback music. Fucking those guys write good songs, and I like that. I know it's not for everybody, but it's for me. And that's what's so beautiful about music, is it's subjective, right? Like, a lot of people like Steely Dan. I cringe when I hear that shit for the most part. But if you like Steely Dan, man, good for you. I'm glad you like Steely Dan. I'm glad it makes you feel good when you put it on. Nickelback makes me feel good when I put it on. And if you have a problem with that, then you really have a problem with yourself. And you should look in the mirror and be like, why am I so judgmental about what some people like and what people like and what they don't like? Because that's your fucking problem. So yeah, that's who I've been starstruck around. Has anyone ever been starstruck around you? Well, duh, obviously, happens all the time. But really, no, it happened in the United Kingdom. UK was weird. So I used to be in this band Tragedy, all metal tribute to the Bee Gees, and we got very popular in the United Kingdom. Not like superstars or anything, but we're selling out shows, 500-600 people, 7 nights a week on tour. You know, most tribute bands that I know can only play on Friday or Saturday nights, but we would go on tour over there for 3 weeks, play 20 shows, 21 shows in 3 weeks, playing literally every night, and all the shows would be full. And we would have to go to the merch table afterwards and sign autographs, and people wanted to have pictures taken with us. And this one girl came up to me, and I don't know, she was probably 16, 17 years old. It was in Liverpool, and her friends, she had one friend on either side of her who were holding her arms, and she was shaking. And I was like, what's up? Are you all right? And she was like, I'm just so nervous to meet you. I can't believe I'm actually meeting you in person. Oh my God, I've seen your band so many times. I love you. And I was like, yo, it's all right. I'm just me. And I gave her a big hug, and we hugged for a while, like 10 seconds or something. And she sort of calmed down, and she was like, can I have your autograph? And I was like, fuck yeah. And I signed an autograph for her. And then I took a Sharpie and I rubbed it all over my lips, a black Sharpie. And then I planted a kiss on her cheek, and I left my lip imprints on her cheek, and she freaked out, and she loved it, and she was laughing, and she had calmed down by that point, and just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then we sat and chatted for another like 10 minutes, and then her friends took her away. And we had a lot of situations like that. For whatever reason, people were like, oh my God, you're the grad, I can't believe I get to meet you and all this. And I'm like, dude, we're in a tribute band. This is weird, but I loved it. And I got it, right? Like, even though we're in a tribute band, like, when you see someone on stage, they're larger than life. So I understood it. I thought it was a little weird because we're a tribute band, but we're also American, we're exotic, foreign, got that whole thing, right? And dare I say, we were fucking good. And I'm a very charismatic performer, so I'm not surprised that people were like, holy shit, I get to meet this fucking wacko. And I never took that lightly. I always made sure I gave plenty of time. I was always the first guy when we'd leave the stage. Everyone else would go to the dressing room for like 10 minutes and decompress. I was always the first guy at the merch table because I knew there'd be people there wanting to meet us and wanting autographs and get pictures taken with us and stuff. And every band's got to have that person who connects the most with the crowd. And I was like, that's going to be me, because I was so dumbfounded that I actually ended up in this band and that we were successful and that I got to do this in my 30s when it was something I dreamed of my whole life and never was able to get off the ground with a band or anything. So I was like, I'm going to take advantage of every aspect of this situation. I loved doing interviews. I love signing autographs. I love taking pictures with people. I love designing posters. I love doing all of it. I love performing, obviously. But I never took that lightly. But that girl, I have no idea what her name is or anything. But I wonder if Alex Turner, who listens to this podcast, Alex, do you have a picture of that night? I used to. Maybe. Alex reminds me of another good story. Is Alex's friend James Cross. This was in Carlisle at the Brickyard. After the gig, Alex came to see us a lot. James came to see us a lot too, less than Alex. But James at the end of, speaking of Sharpies, right? After a gig one night, I was like signing autographs and stuff, and James was like, will you sign me ass, mate? That's my British accent, which is terrible, I know. But he wanted me to sign his butt, so he pulled his pants down, and I signed his butt, like signed one of his butt cheeks. And then he was like, we need to get a picture of this. So he bent over, and I put my face next to his butt, and like the person taking the picture was like 1, 2, 3, and I just I took the Sharpie and I just rammed it right up his fucking butthole. I didn't even lick it. I didn't even lube it with saliva. I just rammed a Sharpie up this guy's butt. And I was actually looking at pictures the other day. This was probably 2009, I would say. And I was looking at pictures the other day from when I took Rodney to England, and James and Alex came down to London and we were all hanging out together. I think we all went to see Electric Six together. Is that it? And then just had a night out. And we recreated that photo on the street. It was on Camden High Street. I forget outside of what bar. We ended up getting thrown out of that bar. I know we deserved it, but someone else kind of deserved it. Alex, can you remind me the details of this story? If you can, I'll tell it on next week's episode. But there was someone was being a jerk in there, and then we were jerks back to them, and then I think there was a pint glass that got smashed. I don't remember all of it, but we ended up recreating the photo, and I signed James Cross's butt again and then stuck a Sharpie in his butt. This time he was expecting it, and I also didn't go as far. Well, that's a good story about tragedy, and I think on that note we should end it. Speaking of things in your butt, you know what can end up in your butt without you even realizing it is dead, rotting animal flesh, because it stays in your colon for a while. And if you feel like you don't have enough of that in your butt right now, you should go to speakeasymeats.com and buy some smoked meat. You can use the discount code Jakey. You want to start out 2022 on a high note. Stop trying to grill your own meat. You're not good at it. You're not as good as the professionals at Speakeasy Meat. They smoke the best meats. They smoke pork. They smoke beef. They smoke chicken. They smoke elk, probably if they had access to it. But they do the best smoked meats, and then they seal that flavor in, they vacuum seal that flavor in, freeze it right away, and they send it to you, and it comes in these vacuum sealed plastic pouches. You get it, you transfer it from the box it came in where it's still frozen because they technology or whatever, however they send it in these ecologically sound cardboard boxes with padding and whatnot, and it shows that it's going to show up at your house. It's still going to be frozen. You're going to take that out of the box. You're going to put it in the freezer. Then when you're hungry one day, you're going to pull it out of the freezer. You're going to defrost it. You're going to wrap it in tin foil, put it in your oven to heat it up. You can eat it cold if you want. I wouldn't recommend it. All you need to do is though heat it. You don't need to cook it. It's already cooked. You're not going to get poisoned if you don't cook it right. You know, that's one of the issues with meat sometimes. You're like, what if it's undercooked? What if I get botulism or salmonella or whatever? You're not going to have to worry about that. Just go to speakeasymeats.com. Use the discount code Jakey. Start off 2022 right by ordering some Speakeasy Meats and let that animal flesh fill up your colon for those long, cold winters. All right? SpeakeasyMeats.com, discount code Jakey. Once again, you can text me 917-443-7615. Send me some mail. P.O. Box 113, Yellow Pine, Idaho 83677. Hey, find yourself somebody who loves you, doesn't make you wonder if they love you, doesn't let you go to bed wondering where you stand. And remember, chase your dreams. Fuck the man, fuck the system. Politicians don't care about you. Take care of yourself, take care of each other. Call somebody you haven't talked to in a while. Tell them you love them. Send them a text message. Let people know you care about them. If you do that, more people will let you know that they care about you. Love makes the world go round. Like John Lennon and Paul McCartney said, all you need is love. Keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. Pray to a God if you need to. Pray to yourself. Just take good care of yourself. Keep your mental health one of your first priorities. God bless, and inshallah.